My brother framed me for a mistake I didn't make while I worked overtime. So I revealed the truth and watched him lose everything quietly. I'm a 28-year-old guy, and I've always been the responsible one in my family. Growing up, it felt like the world handed me the invisible clipboard of adulthood, even when I didn't ask for it. I worked long hours at my corporate job, often staying late in the office until the hum of fluorescent lights and the faint scent of coffee became a lullaby for my exhaustion. Meanwhile, my younger brother, Jake, floated through life like gravity didn't exist for him, charming, careless, and somehow never held accountable. I've spent years covering for him, sometimes without even realizing it. Rent when he was short, excuses to our parents for missed deadlines, proofreading half-finished reports he left lying around. I offered him career advice that he nodded at politely, but rarely took seriously. Meanwhile, our parents, blinded by his charisma and quick wit, always seemed to praise him for everything, from minor achievements to mere potential. And there I was, quiet, meticulous, carrying the weight of responsibilities no one acknowledged. I loved Jake, of course I did, but there was always this subtle tension between us, like a low hum under the surface of every family gathering, the kind of unfairness that gnawed at you silently. And recently, I started noticing something off. He'd disappear suddenly when I came home, claim he was working on a project, but wouldn't let me see it, and answer my casual questions with curt, almost defensive replies. I tried to tell myself it was normal, just sibling moodiness, a phase, but there was a weight in my chest, a quiet sense of unease that refused to be ignored. Something in the way he looked at me when he thought I wasn't noticing, a mix of calculation and something colder, made my stomach twist. I shook my head, forcing a laugh as I poured another cup of coffee at my desk. You're imagining things, I muttered under my breath. But deep down, I couldn't shake it. Something was coming, and I had no idea just how far Jake would go. The next few weeks at work felt like walking a tightrope in a storm. My days blurred into late nights, fluorescent lights casting long shadows across my cubicle, while the hum of the printer and the constant clicking of keyboards became my background noise. I prided myself on being thorough, every report double-checked, every email meticulously worded. But the stress was piling up. Clients were impatient, managers were hovering, and my personal life was shrinking into nothing more than a series of calendar reminders. Meanwhile, Jake started showing an odd interest in my schedule. He'd casually ask, "Hey, how late are you staying tonight?" or drop by my apartment under the guise of needing to borrow my laptop. At first, I shrugged it off. He's just curious, I told myself, sipping lukewarm coffee as the city lights blinked outside my window. But the way he lingered, leaning against the doorway, his eyes scanning my workspace like a cat evaluating prey, sent a subtle chill down my spine. One evening, as I returned from yet another 12-hour day, I found him sitting on the couch, scrolling through my laptop without asking. Hey, what are you doing? I said, trying to mask the irritation creeping into my voice. He looked up, smile plastered on, eyes glinting with something I couldn't name. Just checking a few things, making sure everything's okay, he said casually, as if that explained everything. I forced a laugh, pretending not to notice the tension tightening in my chest, but my gut was screaming that something wasn't right. His casual presence felt like a shadow looming over every accomplishment I'd worked for, a reminder that nothing I did could ever escape his reach. I locked the laptop the next day, double-checking every folder, every document, my hands trembling slightly. I tried to push the thought away, but an icy suspicion was crawling up my spine. He wasn't just curious, he was watching. And somehow, I knew that the worst part hadn't even begun yet. It all came crashing down one morning. I was halfway through my coffee, bleary-eyed and scrolling through emails, when my manager's voice cut through my focus like a knife. Can you explain these errors in the Henderson report? She asked, holding a printout that made my stomach twist. My eyes scanned the pages, disbelief flooding me. I had triple-checked that report. I knew I hadn't made these mistakes. I don't understand, I stammered, trying to keep my voice steady. I stayed late last night. I verified every number before sending it off. But she frowned, shaking her head. The timestamp shows edits after 8 p.m., and your entry is, well, it doesn't match the final submission. People noticed you leaving early, too. My chest tightened. Leaving early? I hadn't left early in weeks. My mind raced as I tried to comprehend what she was saying. And then it hit me. The creeping suspicion I'd been trying to ignore. Jake. He'd been around my apartment, asking about my schedule, glancing at my work. Could he have? I left the office that night, the city lights blurry through my windshield, a storm of panic and anger raging inside me. I replayed every interaction, every casual visit he'd made, trying to pinpoint the moment I'd been set up. My apartment felt colder than usual when I walked in. The hum of my laptop was louder than normal, almost accusatory. "Jake," I muttered under my breath, voice barely above a whisper. I confronted him gently at first. "Did you touch my files?" His grin, casual and infuriatingly innocent, made my blood boil. "Relax, man. I was just helping," he said, leaning back as if he owned the place. But I knew the truth, and the sinking realization hit me hard. This wasn't an accident. He had orchestrated the perfect setup to make me look incompetent. I sank into the couch, staring at the ceiling, heart pounding, and felt the first real sting of betrayal. I had to be careful. Any wrong move, and my career could implode before I even had a chance to fight back. The next week felt like walking through a storm with no umbrella. Every glance from my coworkers carried a hint of suspicion. Every casual comment from my manager felt like a veiled accusation. I kept replaying the timeline over and over in my head, trying to piece together exactly how Jake had pulled this off. The more I thought about it, the more it became horrifyingly clear. He hadn't just interfered once. He'd been methodically setting me up for weeks. At home, the tension was suffocating. My parents still praised him constantly, oblivious to what was happening behind closed doors. "Jake's so smart and quick. You should take notes from him," Mom said over dinner one night, eyes glinting with pride. I forced a smile, swallowing the bitter lump in my throat. "Yeah, he's great," I muttered, clinking my fork against the plate. But inside, I was boiling. How could they still see him as flawless when I was drowning in this mess? Jake, of course, acted completely normal. He lounged on the couch, phone in hand, scrolling through social media as if nothing was wrong. "Hey, don't stress it too much, okay?" he said casually, tossing me a grin that made my teeth ache. "Everyone makes mistakes. Just let it slide." I wanted to scream, to shake him, to make him see how much he'd hurt me. But I held back. I knew anger wasn't going to solve this. I needed proof. A way to turn the tables without giving him the satisfaction of knowing I suspected him. That night, I sat at my desk for hours, coffee growing cold, the hum of my laptop like a relentless reminder of the betrayal. My fingers hovered over the keyboard as I scrolled through emails, timestamps, and system logs, trying to find the thread that would unravel the truth. And then, buried in a series of innocuous messages, I saw it. Something that made my stomach drop, my heart thud, and my hands shake. Jake had left a trace, and it was more deliberate than I could have imagined. I spent the entire weekend going over every interaction, every small favor Jake had asked for, every moment I thought was harmless. And then, it clicked. There was a pattern. Every time a minor mistake popped up at work, he had been nearby, either borrowing my laptop, asking about my deadlines, or hovering like a shadow I hadn't noticed before. It was subtle, almost invisible, but now it was glaring. Every accidental, helpful question, every casual visit. It wasn't casual at all. He had been building a perfect little trap. I felt a mix of rage and heartbreak. I wanted to confront him immediately, to yell until he realized what he had done. But part of me knew that would only make him defensive, make him charmingly deflect like he always did. I needed something more concrete, evidence, something that would make him, and everyone else, see him for what he really was. Late that night, I sat cross-legged on my bedroom floor, laptop balanced on my knees, sipping tepid coffee, tracing every digital footprint he had left. The hum of the fan above me and the faint sound of traffic outside made my heart beat faster. I realized I wasn't just angry anymore. I was calculating, patient, determined. I couldn't let him slip away with this. At home, Jake was unusually quiet, probably sensing a shift I hadn't announced. He passed me in the hallway with a casual, "Don't stay up too late staring at spreadsheets, bro." I forced a tight smile. "Thanks," I said, my voice calm, but my mind was racing. I could almost see the little smirk fading from his face as he realized, though he didn't yet know, how much I knew. And that's when I found it. A series of digital edits, tiny but deliberate, timestamps clearly altered, showing he had tampered with files multiple times over the past month. My heart sank and surged at the same time. Proof. Solid, undeniable proof. For the first time, I understood the full extent of his deception, and deep down, I realized the storm I'd been fearing had only just begun. The next morning, I woke with a sense of cold determination. My eyes scanned the room as sunlight slanted through the blinds, dust motes floating lazily in the golden light. and I realized something terrifying and exhilarating at the same time. I had the power now. Jake had been so careful, so smug in his little setup, but he hadn't accounted for one thing: me. I had proof, solid, irrefutable proof that would expose him entirely. I decided to double-check everything before making a move. Sitting at my desk, the hum of my laptop blending with the faint aroma of burnt coffee, I traced his actions line by line. That's when the twist hit me. This wasn't just a petty workplace sabotage. He had gone further, much further, than I'd imagined. He hadn't just manipulated the report. He had actually forged digital signatures on a critical contract. I leaned back, heart pounding, staring at the screen in disbelief. This wasn't minor mischief anymore. If this got out, he could lose everything: job, credibility, respect. My mind raced. Should I confront him immediately? Should I tell my manager right away? I realized that my next move would define everything: my reputation, my career, even the fragile threads of family loyalty. Jake walked past my door casually, phone in hand, whistling a tune. "Coffee?" he asked, grinning like nothing was wrong. I swallowed hard, my throat dry. "No thanks," I muttered, keeping my voice even. He smirked and left, oblivious to the storm gathering silently around him. I leaned back, the chair creaking under my weight, and stared at the screen again. My hands trembled slightly, not with fear, but with the anticipation of what was about to unfold. For the first time, I wasn't just a victim in his game. I was the player, and the board was finally tilted in my favor. But there was one terrifying thought lingering in my mind. If I made a wrong move, everything I'd worked for could crumble. And somehow, I knew. The moment of reckoning was coming sooner than I expected. At home, the air felt heavier than usual, like the walls themselves were leaning in, listening. Jake seemed oblivious to the storm I was quietly preparing, but the way he strutted around the apartment, casual and unbothered, made my skin crawl. He lounged on the couch, scrolling through his phone, earbuds in, tapping his foot to a rhythm only he could hear. "Don't stress so much," he said, without looking up when I walked in, voice dripping with mock concern. "It's just work. Everyone makes mistakes." I forced a tight smile, my jaw aching from clenching it. "Yeah, mistakes," I muttered, letting my fingers brush over the laptop bag I had hidden in the corner. The weight of everything: his lies, my sleepless nights, the creeping doubt from my manager and co-workers, pressed down on me like a physical force. I poured a glass of water, listening to the faint drip from the kitchen faucet, each drop echoing like a metronome in my anxious mind. Mom and Dad were unusually cheerful that evening, praising Jake again for handling things so well, and asking about his day with wide-eyed admiration. I sat quietly, the clink of cutlery against plates sounding like nails on a chalkboard. I realized that my family's blind faith in him had turned into a weapon against me, eroding my confidence while he thrived in the shadows. I wanted to scream, to shake them, to make them see, but I held back. Every fiber of me knew I had to play this carefully. If I revealed too much too soon, it could backfire. I had to wait, observe, and let the evidence speak for itself. Jake laughed softly at something on his phone, and my chest tightened. The more he flaunted his undeserved perfection, the more I understood the depth of his manipulation, and the more determined I became. Because soon, the mask would slip, and when it did, everything he'd built on lies would start to crumble. Then it happened, the moment I'd been dreading. My manager called me into her office, her expression unreadable, and I felt my stomach drop into my shoes. I'd imagined this scenario 1,000 times, but nothing prepared me for the weight of it in real life. "I need to talk to you about the Henderson project," she said, voice calm, but with an edge that made my chest tighten. "We're getting complaints, and we need to know why these errors keep happening." I tried to explain, my hands trembling slightly as I gestured toward the digital files I'd been obsessively checking. I didn't make these mistakes," I said, swallowing hard. "I stayed late. I triple-checked." "Everything. Something's off. I think someone's tampered with the files." But her eyes narrowed slightly, unconsciously skeptical. "I appreciate that, but the logs show edits attributed to you, and people said you left early last week." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I felt small, powerless, and utterly defeated. Every late night, every extra effort, every sacrifice I'd made, all of it seemed meaningless. My career, my reputation, even the trust I thought I had with my team. It was slipping through my fingers while Jake went unchallenged, smug in his invisible throne. Driving home later, the city lights blurred through my windshield. rain streaking the glass like tears I couldn't shed. I thought about my parents praising him, his smug smile at home, the way he made everything about him while I crumbled silently. I felt utterly alone, trapped in a nightmare where fairness didn't exist and betrayal had a face. I slumped into the couch, the hum of the laptop fan filling the silent apartment, and stared at the wall. My body ached, my mind was racing, and for the first time in years, I truly doubted whether I could fight this. I wanted to give up, but even in that despair, a small, cold voice inside me whispered, "He can't get away with this. Not forever." And somewhere deep down, I knew the reckoning was coming. The next few days were a blur of meticulous planning. I refused to let my anger control me. This wasn't about shouting or confrontation. It was about strategy. I needed every piece of the puzzle, every digital footprint Jake had left behind, lined up so precisely that no one could argue with the truth. I sat cross-legged on the floor, laptop on my knees, surrounded by half-empty coffee cups and sticky notes covered in timelines, emails, and suspicious messages. The hum of the fan above me was almost hypnotic, each rotation marking the passage of countless sleepless hours. I started combing through the logs again, timestamp by timestamp, every minor edit he had made highlighted in glaring red in my mind. Each small lie, every helpful suggestion he'd given at work, every time he'd subtly interfered in my routine, it all started to form a damning narrative. My fingers flew across the keyboard as I compiled screenshots, spreadsheets, and time-stamped emails into a single, airtight case. At home, Jake was unusually quiet, sensing perhaps the shift in the air, though he didn't know what I knew. "You've been quiet lately," he said one evening, leaning casually against the doorway. I looked up, calm and measured. "Just thinking about work," I replied. "A lot of things need sorting." He nodded, apparently satisfied with the vague answer, and went back to his phone, oblivious. I leaned back, exhaling slowly, feeling a mix of exhaustion and exhilaration. For the first time in weeks, I felt a sense of control. I wasn't just the victim here anymore. I was ready. I knew that when the moment came, the evidence would speak louder than any argument, any accusation, any charm he could muster. But there was one terrifying thought nagging at the back of my mind. If I slipped up, if I revealed too soon, everything could collapse. And deep down, I knew that the moment to act was coming, and it would change everything. The day finally arrived. I woke up with a mixture of dread and anticipation, the sunlight cutting through the blinds in sharp, golden streaks across my apartment floor. I could feel the tension coiling in my chest like a live wire. Today, everything would change. Today, Jake would see that his little game was over. I requested a private meeting with my manager, laptop and evidence in hand. The office smelled faintly of stale coffee and paper, the quiet hum of computers filling the room like a drumbeat of inevitability. "I want to show you something," I said, voice steady, betraying none of the storm inside me. I opened the folder, screen facing her, and began laying out the proof. Timestamps, email edits, document logs, all of it meticulously organized. Her eyes widened, disbelief flashing across her face, then slowly transforming into comprehension. This is," she started, trailing off, voice tight. I nodded, keeping my tone calm. "It's all here. Jake's manipulations, the edits, the files he touched. I didn't make those mistakes. He orchestrated it." At home that evening, I began dropping hints from my parents, not in anger, but subtly, letting them see the cracks in his story. "Funny," I said casually, scrolling through the timestamps on my laptop in the living room. "How some edits just don't line up with what Jake claimed." My mom frowned slightly, and Dad looked at me, curiosity flickering across his face. Jake, lounging nearby, glanced up, sensing something, but clearly unsure. I kept my composure, letting the weight of the evidence do the talking. He tried to laugh it off, charm his way through the tension, but the room felt different. There was no escape this time. Every smirk, every sly comment, every attempt at deflection only made the truth heavier, more unavoidable. And in that quiet, tense room, I felt it. The first real shift. The game had turned, and for the first time, I wasn't just surviving. I was winning. But I knew this was only the beginning. The full unraveling was still to come. Jake's carefully constructed world began to crumble quietly, almost imperceptibly at first. At work, his charm and smooth explanations started to falter under the weight of the evidence I'd presented. I watched from my desk as my manager called him into a meeting, their expressions unreadable, the air heavy with tension. The faint click of his shoes on the office carpet echoed like a death knell in my mind. Every step he took toward that office felt like a countdown to his undoing. At home, things shifted too. Mom and Dad started asking questions, probing gently but pointedly. "Jake, are you sure those numbers are right?" Mom said one evening, brows furrowed, a note of doubt creeping into her voice. Jake fumbled, scrambling for explanations that sounded rehearsed, then evaporated under our silent scrutiny. His usual confidence, the effortless grin he wore like armor, seemed to chip away a little more with every question. I didn't gloat, didn't smirk. I simply observed, letting the truth speak for itself. Watching him squirm quietly, the facade cracking, was satisfying in a way that words could never capture. At work, colleagues who had once glanced at me with suspicion began to offer tentative nods, small smiles acknowledging the reversal of fortune. I felt my chest loosen, the weight I'd been carrying for weeks beginning to lift. Jake tried to salvage it, tried to charm his way out, tried to charm me, but I was unshakable now. "I guess honesty matters more than luck," I muttered under my breath one evening, sipping cold coffee. The hum of the laptop fan, a steady reminder of all the hours I'd spent preparing for this moment. By the time the week ended, the transformation was complete. Jake's reputation at work was fractured, his credibility at home shaken, and I finally felt the calm satisfaction of justice, served quietly, without theatrics. And yet, as I leaned back, exhausted but relieved, I realized one thing. Some wounds don't heal immediately. There was still one final reckoning left, one that would close the chapter completely. In the days that followed, life slowly began to return to a semblance of normalcy. At work, my reputation was restored. Colleagues offered smiles that carried genuine respect this time, not doubt. My manager even pulled me aside one afternoon, her eyes softening. "I'm sorry for doubting you," she said quietly. "You handled this with more patience and professionalism than anyone could expect." I nodded, the warmth of validation washing over me in a way I hadn't realized I'd been starving for. At home, the tension around Jake gradually shifted. He still existed in the space we shared, but his confidence had dimmed, replaced by a cautious, almost fragile awareness. I guess I messed up," he mumbled one night, avoiding my gaze. I didn't respond immediately. I didn't need to. His words hung in the air, unspoken acknowledgement of the truth he could no longer escape. Mom and Dad, finally seeing the situation for what it was, began to treat me differently, not with overcompensation, but with recognition of the effort, integrity, and resilience I had maintained silently for years. "We should have noticed sooner," Dad admitted, his voice tinged with guilt. I just smiled faintly, letting it settle without argument. I learned something crucial through all of this. Patience, strategy, and unwavering belief in the truth are far more powerful than anger or impulsive reactions. I had endured sleepless nights, anxiety, and the gnawing feeling of injustice, but I had emerged stronger, more confident, and undeniably vindicated. Jake remained in the background, a cautionary reminder of manipulation and entitlement. I no longer felt trapped by his shadow, or the unfairness that had plagued me for so long. The air in our home felt lighter, quieter, almost peaceful. I leaned back on the couch one evening, the soft hum of the ceiling fan above me, and let a deep breath escape. For the first time in weeks, I felt in control, not just of my career or my reputation, but of my life. The storm had passed, the reckoning was complete, and I had finally reclaimed my space, my dignity, and my peace. And in that quiet moment, I realized something profound. Justice doesn't always roar. It sometimes whispers, quietly, and it lasts.